This copy that I have here is actually my wife's from when she was in college. So that's what we're going to do today, and I'm just going to jump in the middle of it. And I'm going to let you know now, I'm going to butcher some of these names, so I do apologize for that in advance. Just being honest with you, okay? On the 24th, there was the battle at the Giardino Redoubt. On the 25th, not a single shot was fired on either side. On the 26th came the Battle of Borodino. Why and how was battle offered and accepted at Giardino and Borodino? Why was the Battle of Borodino fought? Neither for the French nor for the Russians did it make the slightest sense. The most immediate result of it was and had to be, for the Russians, that we came nearer to the destruction of Moscow, which we feared more than anything in the world, and for the French, that they came nearer to the destruction of their whole army, which they also feared more than anything in the world. This result was perfectly obvious then, and yet Napoleon offered and could not accept this battle. If the commanders had been guided by reasonable causes, it would seem it should have been quite clear to Napoleon that, having gone 1,300 miles and accepting battle, with the likely chance of losing a quarter of his army, he was marching to certain destruction, and it should have been as clear to Kutuzov that, in accepting battle and also risking the loss of a quarter of his army, he would certainly lose Moscow. For Kutuzov, this was mathematically clear, as it is clear that, in a game of checkers, if I have one man less and keep trading man for man, I will certainly lose, and therefore I should not keep trading. When my opponent has 16 pieces and I have 14, I am only 1/8 weaker than he. But when I have traded 13 pieces, he will be 3 times stronger than I. Before the Battle of Borodino, our forces were approximately 5 to 6 with the French, but after the battle, they were 1 to 2. That is, before the battle, it was 100,000 to 120,000, but after the battle, it was 50,000 to 100,000. And yet the intelligent and experienced Kutuzov accepted battle, and Napoleon, a commander of genius, as they call him, offered battle, losing a quarter of his army and extending his line still more. If it is said that, by occupying Moscow, he thought to end the campaign, as he had by occupying Vienna, there are many arguments against it. Napoleon's historians themselves say that he already wanted to stop after Smolensk, that he knew the danger of his extended position and knew the occupation of Moscow would not be the end of the campaign, because after Smolensk he had seen the condition of the Russian towns abandoned to him, and he had not received a single response to his repeated announcements of his wish to negotiate. In offering and accepting battle at Borodino, Kutuzov and Napoleon acted involuntarily and senselessly, and only later did historians furnish the already accomplished facts with ingenious arguments for the foresight and genius of the commanders who, of all the involuntary instruments of world defense, were the most enslaved and involuntary agents. The ancients left us examples of heroic poems in which heroes constitute the entire interest of history, and we still cannot get used to the fact that, for our human time, history of this sort has no meaning. To the other question, how the Battle of Borodino and the one that preceded it at Cherubino were offered, there exists in the same way a quite definite and universally known, but completely false notion. All historians describe the matter in the following way. The Russian army, in its retreat from Smolensk, was supposedly seeking the best position for a general battle, and such a position was supposedly found at Borodino. The Russians supposedly fortified this position beforehand, to the left of the road from Moscow to Smolensk, almost at a right angle to it, from Borodino to Utitsa, on the very place where the battle was fought. In front of this position, a fortified outpost was set up on the Shevardino Barrow, supposedly to observe the enemy. On the 24th, Napoleon supposedly attacked the outpost and took it, and on the 26th he attacked the whole Russian army, which stood in position on the field of Borodino. So the histories say, and it is all completely incorrect, as anyone who wishes to get to the essence of the matter can easily satisfy himself. The Russians were not seeking the best position. On the contrary, during their retreat, they passed many positions that were better than Borodino. They did not step any of these positions because Skutas did not want to accept a position that he had not chosen, and because the people's call for battle had not yet expressed itself strongly enough, and because Miloradivich had not yet arrived with the militia, and for countless other reasons. The fact is that the former positions were stronger, and the position at Borodino, the one on which the battle was fought, not only was strong, but could no more be considered a position than any other place in the Russian Empire, on which, by guesswork, one might randomly stick a pin in a map. The Russians not only did not fortify the position on the field of Borodino to the left, at a right angle on the road, that is, the place the battle was fought, but never thought until the 25th of August, 1812, that the battle could be fought in that place. This is proved first by the fact that there not only were no fortifications in that place on the 25th, but that, having been begun on the 25th, they were not finished on the 26th. Second, it is proved by the position of the Shevardino Redoubt and the Shevardino Redoubt in front of the position on which battle was accepted made no sense at all. Why was this redoubt fortified more than any other point? And why, in defending it until late at night on the 24th, were all efforts exhausted and 6,000 men lost? A mounted Cossack patrol would have sufficed to observe the enemy. The third proof that the position on which the battle took place had not been foreseen, and that the Shevardino Redoubt was not an outpost of that position, is that until the 25th, Barclay de Tolly and Bagration. The third proof that the position on which the battle took place had not been foreseen, and that the Shevardino Redoubt was not an outpost of that position, is that until the 25th, Barclay de Tolly and Bagration were convinced that the Shevardino Redoubt was the left flank of the position, and that Kutuzov himself, in his report written hot on the heels of the battle, called Shevardino the left flank of the position. Much later, when there was more leisure for writing reports about the Battle of Borodino, the incorrect and strange testimony was invented, probably to justify the mistakes of the commander-in-chief, who must be infallible, that the Shevardino Redoubt was supposedly an outpost, whereas it was only a fortified point on the left flank, and that the Battle of Borodino was accepted by us at a fortified and previously chosen position, whereas it occurred in a completely unexpected and almost unfortified place. This is evidently how it was. A position was chosen along the river Kolosha, which crossed the high road not at a right angle, but at an acute angle, so that the left flank was in Shevardino, the right near the village of Novo, and the center in Borodino, by the confluence of the rivers Kolosha and Voina. For an army that aims at stopping the enemy from moving down to the Smolensk road towards Moscow, this position, under cover of the river Kolosha, is obvious to anyone who looks over the field of Borodino, forgetting how the battle took place. Napoleon, having written to Valjevo on the 24th, did not see, as the history books say, the position of the Russians from Utitsa to Borodino. He could not have seen that position because it did not exist, and did not see the outpost of the Russian army, but ran into the Shevardino redoubt as he pursued the Russian rear guard, and unexpectedly for the Russians, had his troops cross the Kolocha. And the Russians, even before the general battle, withdrew their left wing from the position they had intended to occupy, and took up a new position that had not been foreseen or fortified. By crossing to the left side of the Kolocha, to the left of the road, Napoleon shifted the whole future battle from the right to left, viewed from the Russian side, and transferred it to the field between Utitsa, Semyonovskoye, and Borodino, a field no more advantageous as a position than any other field in Russia, and the whole battle of the 26th took place on that field. In crude form, the plan of the supposed battle and actual battle is as in the map opposite. If Napoleon had not ridden out to the Kolocha on the evening of the 24th, and had not ordered an attack on the redoubt that same evening, but had begun the attack the next morning, no one would have questioned that the Shevardino redoubt was the left flank of our position, and the battle would have taken place as we had expected. In that case, we would probably have defended the Shevardino redoubt on our left flank still more tenaciously. We would have attacked Napoleon in the center or on the right, and the general battle would have taken place on the 24th at a position that had been fortified and foreseen. But since the attack on our left flank took place in the evening, following the retreat of our rear guard, that is, immediately after the battle of Gridnevo, and since the Russian commanders did not want or did not manage to begin the general battle that same evening of the 24th, the first and main action of the Battle of Borodino was already lost on the 24th, and obviously had led to the loss of one fought on the 26th. After the loss of Shevardino redoubt, we found ourselves on the morning of the 25th with no position on the left flank, and were forced into the necessity of pulling our left wing back and hastily fortifying it wherever it ended up. But it was not just that the Russian troops on the 26th of August were defended by weak, unfinished fortifications. The disadvantage of this position was increased still more by the fact that the Russian commanders, not having fully grasped the accomplished fact, the loss of the position on the left flank, and the transfer of the whole future battleground from right to left, remained in their extended position from the village of Novo to Utitsa, and as a result had to move their troops from right to left during the battle. Thus, throughout the battle, the Russians confronted the whole French army directed against our left wing, with forces that were twice weaker. The actions of Poniatowski against Utitsa and of Urov against the French on the right flank were separate from the course of the battle's action. And so, the Battle of Borodino took place not at all as it is described, in an attempt to conceal the mistakes of our commanders, and thereby diminishing the glory of the Russian army and people. The Battle of Borodino did not take place on a chosen and fortified position, which only slightly weaker forces on the Russian side, but owing to the loss of the Shevardino redoubt, was accepted by the Russians on open, almost unfortified terrain, with forces twice weaker than the French. That is, in conditions in which it was not only unthinkable to fight for 10 hours and leave the battle undecided, but unthinkable to keep the army for as long as 3 hours from total destruction and flight. On the morning of the 25th, Pierre was driving out of Mosyak, going down the huge, steep, and crooked hill that led out of the town, past the cathedral that stood on the hill to the right, in which a service was going on and the bells were ringing. Pierre got out of the carriage and went on foot. Behind him, a mounted regiment was coming down the hill, with singers at its head. In the opposite direction came a train of carts, with men wounded in yesterday's action. The peasant drivers, shouting at the horses and whipping them with knouts, kept running from one side to the other. The carts, with 3 or 4 wounded men lying or sitting in them, bounced up and down on the stones scattered over. The carts, with 3 or 4 wounded men lying or sitting. The carts, with 3 or 4 wounded men lying or sitting in them, bounced up and down on the stones scattered over the steep ascent and the guise of pavement. The wounded men, bandaged with rags, pale, with compressed lips and frowning brows, clinging to the sides, bounced and jostled in the carts. They all looked at Pierre's white hat and green tailcoat with an almost naive, childlike curiosity. Pierre's coachman shouted angrily at the train of wounded that they should keep to one side. The cavalry regiment, coming down the hill with songs, ran into Pierre's drosky and blocked the road. Pierre stopped, pressing himself to the edge of the road, which was dug out of the hillside. Because of the slope of the hill, the sun did not reach the dugout road, and it was cold and damp. Over Pierre's head was the bright August morning, and the bells rang out merrily. One cart with wounded stopped at the edge of the road just next to Pierre. The driver, in bast shoes, ran breathlessly to the cart, stuck a stone under the tireless rear wheels, and began to straighten the breeching on his stopped little horse. One wounded old soldier with an arm in a sling, who had been walking behind the cart, took hold of it with his good hand and glanced at Pierre. "Well, countryman, are they setting us down here, or taking us to Moscow?" he said. Pierre was so deep in thought that he did not hear the question. He looked first at the cavalry regiment that had now run to the train of the wounded, then at the cart he was standing near, and on which 2 wounded men were sitting and one was lying, and it seemed to him that there, in them, lay the solution to the problem that preoccupied him. One of the soldiers sitting on the cart had probably been wounded in the cheek. His whole head was bound in rags, and one cheek was swollen as big as a baby's head. His mouth and nose were askew. This soldier was looking at the cathedral and crossing himself. The second, a young boy, a recruit, fair-haired and as white as though there was no blood at all in his delicate face, looked at Pierre with a fixed, kindly smile. The third lay prone, and his face could not be seen. The cavalry singers were just passing by the cart. Lost and gone, this bristly head, now living in some foreign land. They poured out a soldier's dance song, as if seconding them, but with another sort of merriment. The metallic ring of the bells throbbed on high, and with yet another sort of merriment, the sun's hot rays bathed the top of the slope opposite. But under the slope, by the cart with the winding men, near the panting little house where Pierre was standing, it was damp, bleak, and sad. The soldier with the swollen cheek looked angrily at the cavalry singers. "Some songbirds," he said reproachfully. "Today it wasn't just soldiers. I saw peasants too. They even drive peasants to it," a soldier standing behind the cart said with a sad smile, addressing Pierre. "No sorting them out nowadays. They want the whole people to throw their weight into it. Moscow, in short. They want to make an end of it." Despite the vagueness of the soldier's words, Pierre understood everything he meant to say and nodded approvingly. The road cleared and Pierre went down the hill and drove on. Pierre drove along, looking on both sides of the road, searching for familiar faces, and everywhere meeting only the unfamiliar military faces of various kinds of troops, who stared with identical surprise at his white hat and green tailcoat. Having gone about 3 miles, he met a first acquaintance and jovially addressed him. This acquaintance was one of the chief doctors of the army. He was coming towards Pierre in a britzka, with a young doctor sitting beside him, and, recognizing Pierre, told his Cossack, who sat on the box in place of a coachman, to stop. "Count, your Excellency, what are you doing here?" asked the doctor. "I just wanted to have a look." Yes, there'll be plenty to look at. Pierre got out and stopped to talk with the doctor, explaining to him his intention of taking part in the battle. The doctor advised Bertrov to address him directly to his serenity. "Why should you be God knows where, in obscurity during the battle?" he said, exchanging glances with his young colleague. "And his serenity does know you, after all, and would receive you graciously. That's the thing to do, old boy," said the doctor. The doctor seemed tired and hurried. "You think so? And I also wanted to ask you, where is the actual position?" asked Pierre. "Position," said the doctor. "That's not in my line. Go past our Niveau, where all the dig is going on. Climb up on the barrow there, and you can see from there," said the doctor. "You can see from there, and if you'd—" But the doctor interrupted and moved towards the Britska. "I'd take you there, but by God, you see," the doctor gestured at his throat, "I'm raising the corps commanders. How are things with us? You know, Count, tomorrow's the battle. For 100,000 troops, we must figure on at least 20,000 wounded, and we don't have enough stretchers or beds or medics or doctors for even 6,000. There are 10,000 carts, but we need other things as well, so do as you like." The strange notion that among these thousands of men, alive, healthy, young and old, who had stared with merry surprise at his hat, there were probably 20,000 destined for wounds and death, maybe the same ones he had seen, struck Pierre. They may die tomorrow. How can they think of anything else but death? And suddenly, by some mysterious linking of thoughts, he vividly pictured the descent of the hill of Mossack, the carts with the wounded, the ringing bells, the slanting rays of the sun, and the songs of the cavalrymen. The cavalrymen go to battle and meet the wounded, and they don't stop to reflect for a moment on what awaits them, but go past and wink at the wounded. And 20,000 of them are doomed to die, yet they get surprised at my hat. Strange, thought Pierre, heading on towards Toronto. By a landowner's house on the left side of the road stood carriages, wagons, crowds of orderlies and sentries. His serenity was staying here. But at the time of Pierre's arrival, he was not there, and there was almost no one from his staff. They were all at a prayer service. Pierre drove down to Gorky. Driving up a hill and coming to a small village street, Pierre saw militiamen for the first time, with crosses on their heads and white shirts, who with loud talk and laughter, lively and sweaty, were doing some sort of work to the side of the road, on an enormous barrow overgrown with grass. Some of them were digging at the hill with shovels. Others were transporting dirt over planks in hand carts. Still others stood around doing nothing. 2 officers were standing on the barrow giving them orders. Seeing these moujiks, who obviously still enjoyed their new military situation, Pierre again recalled the wounded soldiers in Mossack and understood what the soldier had meant to express, saying they want the whole people to throw their weight into it. The sight of these bearded moujiks working on the battlefield, with their strange clumsy boots, with their sweaty necks, and some with their side-buttoned shirts open, revealing their sunburned collarbones, impressed Pierre more strongly than anything he had seen or heard, and significant of the present moment. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please like and comment and subscribe if you would like. And I definitely do want to do more reading, whisper videos. So it's definitely something that I will continue to do. Hopefully I get better at pronouncing names. Again, I do apologize for that. But thank you, and I hope you have a good night, and I will see you next time.